Welcome to the Dr. April Jasper Show, relevant conversations for business owners of today.
This podcast is sponsored by Essilor Luxottica, dedicated to empowering humans.
Welcome, everyone, to the Dr. April Jasper Show. This is a very special recording, a very special event, a very special time for me because I have Dr. Monica Jong here with me. And Monica, what I love about this moment of us being able to spend some time together is that there's something brand new that's out in the world of myopia that is going to have such a great impact on my patients. So I'm really excited. But before we dive in, tell everybody a little bit about you.
Thanks, April. It's really exciting to be here today. And I know I'm not a household name in the US, but I've been working in the space of myopia management now for probably at least 10 years. I can't even believe how long it's been. But I'm an optometrist originally from Australia, where I practiced in many different settings, remote, rural, as well as metropolitan areas. And I was doing a lot of primary eye care. And back then I was creating my own education materials in dry eye as well as pediatric vision and fitting contact lenses in children. That kind of started my passion for education. But then I did a PhD and then I started working with Professor Brian Holden in Sydney. Now, That was when I didn't even know I was going to go into myopia management at all. At that point in my life, I'd never heard of it because back then no one believed in myopia management. All that was available about that was animal studies, lenses in front of the animal's eyes, which could change eye growth. Now, when I started at the Brian Holden Vision Institute, the only reason I went there was because I saw an ad in an industry magazine that said they were looking for a research optometrist. I had just returned to Australia following a postdoc and I was just looking for an academic job. And so I turned up to an interview with Professor Brian Holden and he told me they were doing all these amazing things in refractive error, myopia research and advocacy. And there was no real job description, but I was inspired by the brilliant man who was the founder of silicone hydrogels, as well as a lot of the myopia work that's done today. Without him, the medical profession would not recognize myopia as it is today as a condition that needs to be managed.
That's true.
So what I did working at the Brian Holden Vision Institute was really working in clinical trials around the world, looking at contact lenses, drugs in the eye, myopia control spectacles. I was traveling the world and I also started just being thrown into the deep end and speaking and educating doctors at CE meetings. I remember my first meeting was at Stellest. Professor Brian Holden just said to me, hey, we just need an extra person who's going to be able to help do some talks. And this is the meeting you're going to do your first one at. So that was a great experience because I was on the stage with Professor Brian Holden and Professor Earl Smith and Dr. Tom Aller.
Wow.
And I was this just your average girl next door from Australia standing on a stage in Las Vegas. So that was such a great experience, but it really ignited the passion of sharing knowledge with my peers, optometrists. So from BHVI, I was able to learn advocacy about myopia management. So taking the information from clinical trials, putting that together, speaking to people in the WHO, International Agency for Prevention of Blindness.
Wow.
Yeah, I had no experience in that, but Professor Brian Holden saw that I guess I was someone who was just passionate,
yeah.
And I was willing to just learn and just jump into the deep end. So I was able to help put together the WHO meeting planning and invite the WHO to Australia on behalf of the government, working with Professor Brian Holden to have the meeting and then draft the report. That was the first time the medical profession recognised myopia as a condition that needs to be managed back in 2016. And then I also had the opportunity to co-write the paper that reported that half of the world will have myopia by 2050.
Wow.
But then things didn't stop because you can do all that work, but the practitioners are still not implementing myopia management.
That means me. So what you're trying to say, Monica, and I don't mind you saying it because it's real, and that's what we do on the show is we want to bring that information to the practitioners out there, but also to patients. I want them to hear it. The fact that only, 10% of doctors out there, eye doctors, are talking about myopia management, which means the control of myopia, keeping it from progressing, is really, to me, sad. Why do you think in the past that was as low a number as it was? And what do you think will help us to bring that number to a bigger one now?
Yeah, I can really look back on everything and understand why. Because even when I was at the Brian Holden Vision Institute, when we're talking about nearly 10 years ago now, the only thing that practitioners had access to were soft myopia control contact lenses
Right.
or orthokeratology.
Yep.
And we know that those two types of modalities, there's a lot of evidence behind them that demonstrates that they work really well. However, there are so many barriers for adoption, both for the patient. It's not easy for a young child to handle contact lenses without parents and the practitioner on board to spend the time to train. And for a lot of optometrists, they felt that chair time was an issue, and then designing ortho-K lenses are not simple, and then there's a lot more follow-up required. So at that time at BHVI, we weren't able to develop myopia control spectacles that were really efficacious. And so we thought that it was only going to be soft contact lenses or ortho-K. But through all the innovation and development that's happened, the world has changed so fast, because there are myopia control spectacles available today that work better than many other treatments available. So to me,
That's incredible.
That's truly incredible.
So how long have they been available, and can doctors in the U.S. actually prescribe them?
Well, that's a really good question, because they have been available for quite a while outside of the US. So based on the peer-reviewed studies, we've got studies out to 6 years reporting on the Stellest in China and other parts of the world, and they've been available in 45 countries.
Wow.
Now, with the Stellest lenses, I have also been treating my son with them.
Ooh,
But
tell me about
this. This was
this.
long before I joined Luxottica too. So 2 years ago, I was very concerned with my son. He was 5 years of age. He was spending too much time on an iPad, and he wasn't really going outside enough, because in Florida, the weather is beautiful, but in the summertime, it's so hot.
Right.
So that there was that challenge. So I took him to an optometrist, and I had his, cycloplegic refraction done and axial length measured, and his refraction was lower plus than I expected
Right.
for his age of 5 years. And then he had slightly flatter corneas and slightly longer axial length. And then based on my genetics with myopia, I was very, very concerned. So immediately I didn't know anything about fitting Stellest. I only read the studies. So I decided, okay, we're just going to buy frames off the shelf in the US at the optometry practice, and I'm going to measure his distance PDs and dot the centers of his pupil on the frames. And then after that, I had the prescription, and then I phoned my friend in Canada, who then had a debate with me as to why I'm prescribing Stellest and why am I doing pre-myopia treatment.
Oh my goodness.
Well, as a clinician, I said, I'm a clinician,
Right.
and I'm also a parent, and based on the evidence that I've read, I want to do this for my son, and he needs this treatment. And so I sent the frames to Canada, which was a process, because you have to, it's like, you have, as a parent, imagine you have to make the effort of buying the frames, then going to UPS and then navigating that and then sending it there. So my friends ordered the Stellest lenses for me and then sent them back to me in Jacksonville.
And he's been wearing them.
Yeah, he's been wearing them, and he's been stable in his pre-myopia for 2 years. So fingers crossed.
Oh, I love that. And honestly, you bring up several points. One of them, let's back up to the point where you said, because of these 5 things, you named off 5 things, you knew that he was at risk. So what I think is important for people to understand is that there are risk factors that we can look at and be able to determine if a patient is going to become myopic based on a lot of the research that you guys have done. That's what you're saying, right?
Correct. So it's not even research that's done by Luxottica. It's research done by other experts in the field, like Carla Zadnik and her group, that published the hyperopia cutoffs expected for age. For example, a 6-year-old should be over plus 0.75 diopters of hyperopia. Now, my son was less than that at 5.
Right.
So I was really concerned. And the decision to manage myopia is really based on what the clinician feels is the most appropriate based on benefit and risk profile.
Right. Well, what I like to always point out too when people ask me this question is, you are managing myopia as a doctor, even if you are doing nothing. That is your choice for how you're managing that patient's myopia. And Monica, I had a similar situation. Our son Aiden, when he was small, very little, he started to develop myopia. My dad is a -9. And so I immediately knew we had a problem, and I was just in high gear. Let's do something about it. So we actually put him in an ortho-K lens. It was only one eye, put him in an ortho-K lens, and we were able to see that it worked. Having other options, I think, is extremely important, though, for parents and for our children. So let's go back to the other thing you said. The other thing you said is, as a mom and a clinician, so a mom that had the data, that knew what the future might be for your son, you said, we are going to do something about it, and you jumped right on it. Do you feel like that maybe some of the 90% of doctors that are out there that are not actually moving forward and doing something about it, do you think we would, if I was in that 90%, do you think I'd be likely to be different if it were my child?
I think yes, but also because there is the availability of myopia control spectacles now, which has made it much more easier. Because before, you know, I was at a contact lens research institute, so I was very comfortable with contact lenses, and the risks overall, when you look at the studies, are very low for microbial keratitis, especially when the child is managed properly and followed up.
Right.
But that kind of small risk is still a risk that a lot of medical doctors don't like, and a lot of parents also don't feel comfortable with having to supervise their child every day when it comes to contact lens wear or ortho-K.
Yeah.
So I think now
Options
with the
are
myopia
good.
control spectacle, it means a lot of doctors, ODs, MDs, pediatric ophthalmologists become more comfortable with the idea and probably are more likely to have that conversation.
So should we talk a little bit about how they work? Give us a little bit of information. We don't have to dive into deep science, but what is this lens and why does it work?
So this lens has a correction zone in the middle, and then it's surrounded by 11 treatment rings. Now, these treatment rings contain 1,021 highly aspherical lenslet targets called HALT. I have to say it very, very slowly. So what it means is there's 1,021 little lenses on a lens itself that's delivering treatment. So imagine you're getting so many more locations and treatments going into the eye. So why it works is because these treatment zones create a volume of myopic defocus. Now, other optical treatments create a surface plane of defocus because they just have one single add power, whereas this creates a volume because the treatment varies from plus 350 to plus 550 diopters within the one lens. Wow. And so you're getting more treatment power and more size of treatment. So that's in a nutshell.
I love it. So for parents that are listening, I think the thing for them, what I tell them honestly in my practice, so I'll share with other clinicians as well as any parents that are listening, I like to talk to my patients about the fact that myopia is progressive and it's worse the younger they are diagnosed and the higher the amount and the number of parents they have. So we talk about, with myopia, we talk about risk factors. But then I like to walk through the fact that we have to do something. And so what is the something? Now that we have Stellest, that we have a spectacle option, what has really been rung true for me, especially listening to you talk about it, is that I have an option for those patients and parents, like you said, that are uncomfortable with contacts or uncomfortable with any other treatment. And I love the fact that I can use this for any of my myopic children, myopic patients. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot about it. Clinical studies, people, I think a lot of our listeners know, I was a medical monitor for several clinical studies in the past number of years. And so clinical studies are very, very regimented, as they should be. But what happens with clinical studies is that you have a group that's an inclusion group, you have exclusion criteria, all of that, which makes it very sciencey, which is good, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to set boundaries so we can actually find enough children and complete the studies. So that's why in this study we had a limit of children between the ages of 6 to 12 and myopia spherical equivalent of between minus 0.75 to minus 450 diopters.
The bad thing about that to the onlooker is that maybe that means in their mind that's the only people, those are the only patients that they would be able to put a Stellest lens on. So, Monica, I'll let you be silent on the matter. I will tell my colleagues and my friends, we have to be the doctor. And when I looked at studies as a medical monitor, yes, we have to abide by these rules and do this in the clinical study. But then the point of it is, let's get this out in the market so that doctors then can decide who are the best patients to actually be able to utilize these methods of correction of myopia that will also help to stop the progression of myopia. So I'm really excited. I think what's going to happen in my practice as I've been seeing it roll out is that this is going to be an additive treatment as well. So I'm going to be able to put my patients that are in contacts also in a pair of Stellest lenses. I think both work and both are going to be important for me. And I'm not saying my way is right. There isn't any evidence yet that I've heard of. Maybe you can tell me that tells us how to do additive treatments. But I'm a doctor and I can make that decision because you've been able to give me the product that is FDA approved, and then I can decide how it's going to work best with my patients. Does that sound like something that you guys have no experience yet on it because you don't have a lot of people having been putting patients in them? But I know it's been used in other countries, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. The good thing is we're seeing our colleagues in other countries do things like combination therapy because they realize they have a lot of children who are at high risk of progressing.
Right. Yeah.
And they're seeing the data that's been published in peer-reviewed journals overseas that have looked at combination therapy of certain modalities like Stellest with low-dose atropine. And we also know that with any treatment, the more hours you use a treatment, that also is linked to the efficacy.
Yep.
So imagine you have a child wearing myopia control soft contact lenses. What are they doing with their eyes when they're not wearing those contact lenses, right? So why are we not providing a treatment all the time if possible? Because it's correcting their vision and it's slowing their myopia. And we have a treatment today that virtually has been designated almost zero risk by the FDA.
I love it. So there's something else I wanted to talk about too. I know this is a huge opportunity for all of us, and I use the word I don't like to use. Did you hear what I said? I said opportunity. What I really feel is something that's been near and dear to my heart. I've been passionate about this for a very long time, ever since I was in optometry school, is that this myopia control, myopia management, whatever the term is that a doctor wants to use, what I'm passionate about is the fact that we have to do something. Because look at my 9-diopter dad. He had, he had posterior staphylomas. He had retinal damage that was irreversible because there was nothing done when he was young. And we didn't know about anything back then. He's 75 years old. There wasn't anything that we knew about at that time. Actually, what people were doing, Monica, I know you know this, but a lot of doctors were under-correcting their myopia. Is that okay?
Well, I would say we shouldn't do that anymore because, people think that undercorrecting is better because some cultures think it weakens the eye. But in fact, studies are showing that undercorrection might even increase the rate of myopia or make no difference. But you're leaving your patient blurry so they can't see the board.
Right. So not only could you make them worse, but you also they also can't see. But that was what was done in his day. So now here I am today. Imagine how I'm going to feel, how all these doctors out there feel when a patient progresses in their myopia and comes in and says, I heard from a friend that there's an option. And then if I'm not the one that talks about that, it certainly isn't a good moment for me. And that's what I worry about with my colleagues and that's why I wanted you here, Monica, because I want them to know there are more options available. And this was just something that was in the market as of September. What was the date?
September 25.
So it's really new. Yeah.
I'm really excited about this because it is an opportunity. The way I see it is it's an opportunity for all of us to do great good.
Yeah.
There are still millions of children in single vision distance spectacles today.
Right.
Why is that in the US, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, that children are still wearing single vision distance spectacles?
Right.
So there's a lot for us to do. Each optometrist has to see 298 children a year to be able to manage myopia.
Oh, I heard you say that statistic earlier. Now I'm getting it. Say it again.
So for us to be able to address the myopia problem in the US, each optometrist has to see 298 children with myopia a year.
Wow. So what is coming next? Let's talk about that for a minute. So Essilor-Luxottica has now come out with Stellest. We have that available, so we have access to that. Is there anything else in the pipeline?
So the way Essilor-Luxottica sees this is that Stellest isn't just a lens, it's part of a treatment portfolio. And this is the way we view myopia management as a whole. It's about looking at the patient, their clinical profile and lifestyle and what the patient and parent preference is, and then recommending the most appropriate treatment. So Essilor Stellest is the lens in this portfolio, but we're also going to have smart specs. So these specs are going to be able to monitor the wear time of a child and potentially monitor light levels. So it's giving us a lot more information as clinicians to be able to manage our patients. And we're eventually also going to have a Myopia suite that will enable us to measure the axial length and follow it up. And then we have devices that will support measuring axial length as well, and even orthokeratology and a contact lens, so an entire portfolio at some point.
I love that. Can't wait. How do people stay up to date with what's going on? I've actually heard that question a lot. How do I find out what is available and what's happening, what's coming next?
So the best persons to reach out to would be your account manager at this stage. But we as a company, we have a strong professional affairs and medical affairs team. So we will be out on the road delivering education and webinar events. But keep in touch with your account manager for all the latest information.
I think when I look back at this, Monica, and I look back at all the data that you've presented, the one thing that sticks out to me and really I take to heart is, with all the available options we have, there should be something that is going to be perfect for a child. And I think that when you look at our myopic children, and I look at what you did with your son, I look at what I did with what was available with mine. What's beautiful today is there are more options. What would you say to a parent that is at the soccer field with you, whose child is myopic, and they find out what you do? Now they're going to say to you, oh my gosh, there's options. How do I find a doctor? Do you have any advice for them on that?
That's actually a very real life scenario because it was actually a pediatrician's child. The pediatrician was asking me about what can they do with their child because they only had ortho-K and soft contact lens options. And the challenge was that they were saying that their pediatric ophthalmology friends or some of their ODs that they know were saying that those are higher risk options, and that kind of deterred them. So my conversation with them went, look, you know, your child is really young. This is the best time to intervene. And we now have an FDA authorized spectacle lens available that has strong data behind it, and there's almost no risk associated with it. So perhaps your child should try this first. And this lens, what it does is it sends a special signal into the eye that slows the eye growth. And it works. And it's easy to use. And children do really love it.
What did they say when they heard about it?
Then they say, where can I get it?
Right. I love it.
But then that's the challenge, because so many of our colleagues in Jacksonville specifically, and not just Jacksonville, I'm sure in other parts of the US,
right,
think that examining children can be a real challenge, and they don't see children under a certain age. But having a myopia control spectacle lens available now means that a lot of these doctors will more likely want to examine children, because before, if they examined a child and the child needed myopia management, then it was about teaching them to use a soft contact lens, and probably that was a barrier for the optometrist too.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think what we're going to see as time rolls out is that there's a lot more people that get involved because now they understand their options. But I would challenge Essilor-Luxottica to really continue to help us get the word out. I know you guys are going to do that. I love that there's a team of people that are tasked with that. And I think it's going to be fabulous because it'll change the future of myopia for our kids. And I think most doctors want to, but to your point, they're going to need some guidance. And I know that there's education tools out there. You guys will be coming out with more as well. And then we'll talk again and we'll walk through some of that too as more time goes by. But I want to leave the last word with you. So to our audience, what would you say is sort of the take-home message that you have for them, and what would you leave everybody with regarding Stellest?
I would say that myopia management doesn't have to be very complicated. Today, there's a lot more options available, some very, very simple to use. I joined industry from my not-for-profit and academic background because I saw that the evidence was there, and the people that I needed to reach are all of you who are the doctors, because you are the ones who are in the front line, in the trenches, and you are the ones who are able to take the information that I'm pulling together with my team and really support and help our pediatric patients. Now's the best time to get on board because there's no more, exciting opportunity than this.
Right.
We can do something great together.
I love it. Thank you, Monica. Thanks for being here with me.
Thanks again, April.